Europe on edge, drones over Germany, power shifts in Prague, and a storm brewing in Washington. Munich Airport shuts down again after a drone incursion, while Ukraine and the US still a historic drone deal, launching a new era of defense cooperation. In Czech, billionaire populist Andrej Babiš staged a political comeback, shaking the country's balance of power. And in a bold warning, Finland's president says what the Kremlin fears most: a US strike on Putin is only a matter of time. Welcome to Ukraine Today. I'm Zorislava Kolesnikova, and in this episode, Europe braces for impact, America sharpens its tools, and Russia feels the pressure closing in. Stay with us, it's going to be explosive. German airports under drone attack. Munich shuts down again. Germany is once again on high alert. Munich Airport, one of Europe's busiest, was forced to shut down after two unidentified drones entered German airspace overnight. According to Bild, they were military reconnaissance UAVs. In total, 23 flights were diverted, 12 cancelled and 46 delayed. As drone incidents multiply across Europe, Germany's interior minister says it's time to act with a new law allowing the army to shut them down. Full story in our report.
Europe must take seriously the threat posed by Russia, which continues to wage a hybrid war against it, said Ukraine's first deputy foreign minister Serhiy Kyslytsya in an interview with The Guardian. He is convinced that cyber attacks and violations of the airspace of European countries are part of the Kremlin's strategy. This is how Moscow tests the West's response and probes the limits of what is permissible. In the Russian perception, the war with Europe is already underway, albeit in a hybrid form for now. Such provocations, including the use of drones, are the Kremlin's attempt to shift the so-called red lines, the diplomat asserts.
I am convinced that Putin derives emotional if not physical satisfaction from humiliating the West and demonstrating what he considers to be his superpower. In the 21st century, you don't need tanks to bring technologically advanced countries to their knees. Cyber warfare is a reality. You don't need howitzers to paralyze the banking system. By skillfully using drones, you can achieve your goals more effectively than with a nuclear bomb. Serhiy Kyslytsya, First Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, in an interview with The Guardian.
On the night of September 4th, Prague police reported that they had launched a special operation at the capital's airport due to information about approaching drones. To monitor the airspace at low and medium altitudes, they used radars located at stationary military posts.
The drone incursions we've been witnessing over the past few weeks are essentially a kind of test of how the authorities, especially the police and military, respond to such threats. The question is how to properly detect them in the future and how to deal with them. Because constant testing is perhaps not what we need in the coming weeks.
Another European city affected by a drone incursion is Munich. The city's airport has been closed for the second time recently. Police reported that after being detected, the drones turned around and disappeared, so they could not be identified. According to Bild, these were military reconnaissance drones. To avoid wasting time on identification in the future and to immediately shoot down violators, the head of the German Interior Ministry announced that he would submit a corresponding bill to Parliament.
We will create a new unit within the federal police that will deal exclusively with drone defense issues, and it will also include research and development departments that will compete in the field of drone defense in close cooperation with our partners, including Israel and Ukraine. The fact that we have to take into account such a wide range of possibilities, from civilian to military drones, which have already been spotted in neighboring European countries, forces us to make decisions that allow the Bundeswehr to be used to prevent danger.
Recently, there has been an increase in cases of illegal airspace violations by drones in Europe. Airports are being shut down from Norway to Spain. According to the Telegraph's calculations, at least 14 European airports temporarily suspended operations in September due to the intrusion of unidentified drones. As a result, hundreds of flights were delayed. Analysts explain that this is a challenge not only for security, but also for the economy.
When thousands of airline passengers can't fly, it's not just a logistical problem. This is followed by the personal and possibly professional problems, and then all sorts of complaints from the airlines and so on. In other words, we're talking about millions in expenses just for this. Not to mention the fact that actually the billions that all European countries now have to spend, tens of billions, yes, this is essentially unproductive capital, but it's necessary to protect both their own security and, of course, Ukraine.
Ukraine is ready to share its experience in countering Russian drones with its European partners. For example, in Denmark, during an exchange of combat experience as part of a visit by a Ukrainian delegation, Ukrainian soldiers successfully neutralized several drones in the country's airspace. According to a statement from the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, representatives from various European countries were invited to the demonstration, where they had the opportunity to witness the effectiveness of Ukrainian solutions in countering aerial threats. Nikita Skoblikov for Freedom TV channel.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Ukraine and US sign drone deal, new era of defense cooperation. Ukraine's defense industry is entering a new stage. Kyiv and Washington have officially agreed to launch the Drone Deal Initiative, a program to purchase Ukrainian drone and open joint production facilities. At the same time, Ukrainian soldiers are sharing their unmatched experience in countering Russian UAVs with NATO allies. How this partnership could reshape modern warfare, full story in our report.
Ukrainian military personnel are training partners on how to counter Russian drones. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine reported that Ukrainian servicemen successfully neutralized several drones in Danish airspace during an exchange of combat experience as part of a Ukrainian delegation's visit.
Our specialists in countering strike UAVs launched a Sting drone, which successfully destroyed the Danish Banshee. Representatives from various European countries were invited to the drone shoot-down demonstration, where they had the opportunity to see firsthand the effectiveness of Ukrainian solutions in combating aerial threats. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine on Telegram.
Since September 29th, the Wings of Defense exercises have been taking place in Denmark, during which Ukrainian and Danish military personnel are practicing tasks to counter strike drones. The maneuvers are being held against the backdrop of an increasing number of incidents involving drones violating the airspace of European countries. For example, in early September, Poland was subjected to a massive attack by Russian drones, after which Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski announced that Ukrainian drone operators would train Polish anti-drone teams. The head of the Polish Foreign Ministry emphasized, Western countries urgently need to understand that it is Ukrainians who will be training alliance armies to counter Russia, not the other way around.
We must collectively show Putin that there is a limit to his hybrid war, and we will stop him. Because remember, this is not an isolated incident, it's part of a broader pattern. Ukraine has a system for detecting drone routes which, in my opinion, we should implement. And Ukrainians have extensive experience in countering UAVs, both with electronic and kinetic means, which we should integrate into our procurement and doctrine.
Poland has opened the largest training center for preparing Ukrainian servicemen. It can accommodate up to 1,200 soldiers at once and will serve as a platform for sharing experience between the Ukrainian armed forces and the armies of alliance countries, according to Ukraine's Ministry of Defense.
The training center, established with the support of European partners, particularly Norway, will provide training for the defense forces and enhance the exchange of combat experience between the Ukrainian armed forces and NATO. Here we will be able to share our expertise with our partners, including our developments in the use of and countering drones. Yevhen Maishuk, Deputy Minister of Defense of Ukraine, on the website of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine.
Ukraine is the only expert in the world when it comes to combating Russian drones, stated Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen. Her position is shared by NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte.
Ukraine is, of course, a powerful center of innovation and expertise, for example, in technologies for countering drones, cyber warfare, and so on. And the fact that Ukraine is now helping Denmark, Poland, and NATO as a whole, sharing the knowledge it has accumulated over more than 3.5 years, is very important.
In September 2025 alone, Russia launched nearly 10,000 drones at Ukraine. The Russian army is constantly changing its tactics for using UAVs, while Kyiv, in turn, is increasing its capabilities to counter such attacks, said the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrsky.
The improvement of enemy UAV detection systems continues, which increases the effectiveness of their destruction. A command for unmanned air defense systems is being formed within the Air Force of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. We are also developing other countermeasures, in particular, destroying enemy drones using attack helicopters and light aircraft. We are bringing new crews into service. The joint work of the defense forces and manufacturers to improve and implement new types of interceptor drones continues. Oleksandr Syrskyi, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Facebook.
Ukraine is not only sharing its unique experience in neutralizing the aggressor country's UAVs with alliance countries, but is also successfully developing its own weapons production. Thus, during their visit to the United States, the Ukrainian delegation discussed with Pentagon representatives and members of Congress the implementation of the Drone Deal Initiative, which involves the purchase of Ukrainian drones as well as the creation of joint Ukrainian-American production facilities. This concerns not only aerial systems, but also maritime drones and ground-based robotic complexes, in the development and use of which Ukraine possesses unique practical experience, according to Rustem Umerov, Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine. Yulia Granovskaya for Freedom TV channel.
Czech election shock. Babiš ANO party wins government to change. A political earthquake in the Czech Republic. Billionaire Andrej Babiš and his populist ANO party have won the parliamentary elections, gaining the upper hand and the chance to form a new government. President Petr Pavel has already announced his readiness to begin coalition talks. What does this victory mean for Prague's future and what Europe stands on Russia? Full story in our report.
The ANO party, led by billionaire and Eurosceptic Andrej Babiš, is returning to power in the Czech Republic. It received 34.5% of the votes in the parliamentary elections. The victory gives ANO 80 out of 200 seats in the Chamber of Deputies. Babiš called the election victory historic and promised to quickly form a new cabinet of ministers. At the same time, he emphasized that he would like to see only members of his own party in the new government. I am
extremely pleased that the ANO movement has achieved a historic result. Let's see what comes of it. But we definitely have excellent results.
The center-right bloc of incumbent Prime Minister Petr Fiala took second place. Together, they received just under 23%. In third place is the centrist Liberal Party with 11% of the votes. Petr Fiala acknowledged his party's defeat in the elections and assured that he would continue to support the European course for the Czech Republic. Among the key achievements during his tenure as head of government, he cited achieving energy independence from Russia and economic growth outpacing neighboring Austria and Germany.
The result is clear and it must be accepted in a democratic way. That is exactly what we are doing. It is clear that the ANO movement managed to consolidate the votes, including those that were lost in the previous elections. And this must also be acknowledged. Whatever role I may play, I will not give up the fight against populism and extremism. Let no one expect me to resign or grow weary. I will fight to ensure that this country remains democratic and free, an integral part of the West.
Czech President Petr Pavel noted that the high voter turnout in the elections demonstrated the active stance of citizens and their concern for the country's future.
Starting tomorrow, I will begin negotiations on forming a government with the parties that won the elections and passed the threshold required to enter the Chamber of Deputies. I wish for the Czech Republic to have a stable government that will address the fundamental problems of our country and ensure prosperity and security for its citizens. Petr Pavel, President of the Czech Republic, on social network X.
The topic of Russia's war against Ukraine was an important part of the pre-election debate. The Petr Fiala government actively supported Kyiv. For example, in February 2024, the Czech Republic brought together at least 16 European donor countries and launched the Czech Initiative to supply ammunition to Ukraine. But Andrej Babiš, during the election campaign, assured that his government would not participate in the implementation of this plan. Babiš criticized what he considered to be excessive aid to Kyiv.
I just hope that he remains a populist and doesn't keep his promises and that everything stays as it was before. That's how it should be. I mean, everything he promised will never come true.
Of course, I'm not satisfied because the person I was counting on didn't win. Overall, I think this is bad for the Czech Republic, both economically and politically, especially from the perspective of foreign policy.
The ANO party and Babiš himself have long been allies of Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán. According to analysts' forecasts, his victory in the elections will strengthen the populist anti-immigration camp in the European Union.
Well, what possible options are there next? Of course, there are several options. The first and most significant option is that political coalitions, specifically those formed around Babiš, will strongly insist on and actively push the president to accept their demands under the compelling pretext that he is absolutely obliged to do so due to the overwhelming influence of the People's Democratic vote and their clear mandate. The second option is that Petr Pavel will stand his ground and justify his position specifically, let's say, with arguments related to security, and that such a person simply cannot cannot hold the position of Prime Minister of the Czech Republic in such unstable times, especially since Babiš and, in fact, the ANO populists did not advocate or campaign for ending aid to Ukraine.
Earlier, President Petr Pavel, who has the authority to appoint the head of government and ministers, made it clear that he may reject candidates if their actions undermine the Czech Republic's commitments to the European Union and NATO. And on October 5th, the President of the Czech Republic held consultations with the leaders of political parties and movements that entered the Chamber of Deputies. After a series of meetings, it will become clear to whom and under what conditions the head of state will entrust the formation of the Cabinet of Ministers. Petr Pavel noted that he does not intend to delay this process. The new cabinet will be formed fairly soon, promised the President of the Czech Republic. Kristina Dombrovskaya for Freedom TV channel.
US preparing to hit Putin, Finland's president, it's only a matter of time. When America strikes back at Putin, it's only a matter of time, says Finland's president Alexander Stubb. After realizing that diplomacy with Moscow doesn't work, Donald Trump is ready to use the stick instead of the carrot. According to Politica, Washington's possible response ranges for further sanctions and new tariffs to giving Ukraine long-range American weapons. Full breakdown in our report.
If the United States supplies Ukraine with long-range Tomahawk cruise missiles, it will destroy relations between Moscow and Washington, the Russian dictator stated at a meeting of the Valdai Discussion Club. On October 1st, the Wall Street Journal reported that the US had agreed to provide Ukraine with intelligence for strikes using long-range missiles against Russia's energy infrastructure facilities located far from the border. According to the publication, this step is due to the fact that the White House is considering the possibility of supplying Kyiv with long-range weapons. Putin also reminded Donald Trump of the time when the US president called him and Russia a paper tiger.
I told him, you don't look good. You've been fighting a war for 4 years that should have taken a week. Are you a paper tiger?
The Russian dictator took offense and in his usual manner declared,
Well, so, what else exactly can a paper tiger really do? Well then, you should go and effectively deal with this particular paper tiger.
Putin's speech at this Valdai Forum was, in large part, directed at Trump. And not just at Trump, but also at his audience. He is clearly flirting with this audience and also sending a signal to Trump that he is ready to negotiate, that he has a positive attitude toward Trump. He didn't criticize Trump, even when he expressed dissatisfaction or, let's say, issued some warnings regarding the Tomahawks. He did not engage in a direct debate with Trump.
And indeed, except for a moment when his resentment broke through after the US president accused him of lying about the fabricated successes of the Russian army at the front, Putin showered the head of the White House with compliments. He stated that if Donald Trump had been in power, Russia's war against Ukraine would not have started. And he blamed the European leaders for the full-scale aggression unleashed by Moscow. However, this tactic is unlikely to work anymore, according to the president of Finland. Trump no longer intends to persuade Putin. He will act by other means. Having realized that the carrot didn't work, he will switch to the stick. The only question is what form that stick will take, Alexander Stubb told journalists.
You don't have to read The Art of the Deal to understand how President Trump negotiates. It's not a traditional approach, but it's very results-oriented. Alexander Stubb, president of Finland, in an interview with Politico.
President Volodymyr Zelensky called on partners to increase pressure on Russia over the aggressor's hybrid attacks on European countries and Russian terror against Ukrainian civilians.
Unfortunately, there is no strong and worthy response from the world to everything that is happening, to the constant escalation and brazenness of the attacks. That is exactly why Putin does this. He simply laughs at the West, at its silence and lack of strong countermeasures. Russia has rejected all proposals to stop the war, or at least halt the strikes. Russia is openly trying to destroy our civilian infrastructure. Right now, before winter, it is targeting gas infrastructure, electricity generation and transmission. There is zero real response from the world. We will fight to make sure the world does not remain silent and that Russia feels the consequences.
Analysts believe that providing Ukraine with a reparations loan using frozen Russian assets would be a painful blow to the aggressor country. The president of Finland considers this idea brilliant. He is convinced that it will work. The Kremlin understands this as well. Putin is threatening to nationalize foreign assets if the EU uses the frozen reserves of the Russian central bank to help Ukraine, Bloomberg reports. On September 30th, the Russian dictator signed a decree regarding certain specifics of managing property that is federally owned. The document explicitly states that these measures are being taken in response to, I quote, unfriendly actions by the United States and other foreign countries. Andrej Dimitrenko for Freedom TV channel.
That's all for today on Ukraine Today. If you believe truth must be louder than propaganda, like, comment and subscribe. Want to go further? Become a sponsor and join our global fight for facts. Your support helps us expose lies, track tweets and defend Ukrainians' voice on the world stage. Stay informed, stay strong and stay with Ukraine.